Hey guys, Jeremy here at My Way MFG. Ever since we started working on the car back in November, it's always been inside. We've never been able to really walk around and get a good look at it. So let's do that today. We'll just kind of give her an overall, take a good look at it, maybe go for a drive. This is Eliza, my 40 Ford. I bought this last November, maybe the end of October, off a friend of mine, Brian, who he picked this thing up in 2017. It'd been setting since 1959. He was able to get it running. We took a ride in it one day. He drove it around for off and on a couple years, just here and there. But it had a lot of problems. When I got the chance to buy the car, I always kind of wanted it, so I bought it. I thought I could make it a little better, you know? And it's just a true survivor. This car's had very little done to it to make it run, and it was terribly neglected. And the fact that it run is just, and drove good, it's just amazing to me. Okay. First thing you notice with it, we've got 4 new tires on it. The outside of the body is really not that bad. There's some splits in the fenders and stuff I'm gonna have to weld up. There's a big dent right there. The doors were terrible. They wouldn't shut. They were sagging and dragging. The skins were broke loose from the frames. The A-pillars were broke loose from the floors. I've spent the winter getting all that fixed, and they're working really good right now. Running boards are in good shape, basically. We had some rust up here above this window, both sides. This was the worst. And then the windshield above it was in terrible condition. Most of that's fixed up now, a little bit more to do. We're gonna have to put a new floor in the trunk at some point. I had hoped that maybe we would get to it this winter, but there was just too much to do. That's probably gonna be next winter's project. I doubt if I get to it this summer. What I do want to get done this summer is I want to get the glass in the doors and kind of keep going on the interior. That's basically where we've started, because we had to pull everything out. The interior was shot. There was just really nothing to save. We had to pull everything out and put all new floors in this, do all that A and B pillar work, put new supports under the floors. So I just kept going with the interior. It seemed like the thing to do. I thought it would be cool to leave the outside of this car look like this for a while, and then when you look inside, have everything brand new. That's kind of my goal right now. And I think when next winter comes along, we'll redo the trunk. I think I'll take the running boards off and redo them, and get that new rubber stuff that goes back on them, that ribbed rubber, you know. This car may get painted eventually, but for right now, probably not. So I guess let's first talk about the history of the car that I know, and then we'll talk about what Brian did to get it running and what all he got done, and we'll talk about what I've done. The car was bought locally. When it was bought, the license plate said 1959. So the car had been parked since 1959, and nobody had ever touched it. It wasn't molested in any way. Didn't have any bullet holes in it. Didn't have any broken glass. Didn't have any parts robbed off of it. It was just like it was walked away from and never even looked at again. Mice had gotten the interior and just ruined everything. Water leaks. So when Brian was talking to this old guy he bought it from, he said the guy was about 80 years old. The guy had told Brian that this was his mother's car, and she passed away and the car got parked and they just never got rid of it. And he said the motor had been rebuilt in 1954 by a Ford tractor mechanic, and the car was parked in 1959. So it was driven about another 5 years, and then she passed away, or quit driving it, and then later passed away. And then the car set. So when Brian bought it, what he did, he put all brand new brakes on it. Everything dealing with the brakes is new. master cylinder, wheel cylinders, lines, everything. All the grease and oil was checked and topped off, and grease certs checked and all that. He put a new gas tank in it. He ran a new fuel line. He put in an electric fuel pump that's right there. He rebuilt the distributor, but could only find cheap Chinese points, so it's not quite good. I might have to give that some attention. It's got a remote coil on it now. The coils come, they mount right here on top of the distributor. This is a remote kit to move the coil back here. That's 12-volt coil. New plugs and wires. He's put new hood hinges on it. The carburetor's been rebuilt. It's got a GM one-wire alternator on it. I bought a new battery for it. Brian had put 2 new back tires on it. I put 2 new front tires on it. The hoses are all new. Brian got this used radiator and had it flushed. And this isn't the original radiator. The one that was in it just wasn't good enough to use. And Brian said when he first brought it home, the motor was just barely stuck. He got it loose, there was a valve sticking. He was able to reach in there and pry it a little bit. Got it broke loose. Motor run good. Doesn't smoke, nothing like that. Runs great. Drives good too, actually. So, what else has Brian done here? He put new tail lights on it, and he wired up the brake lights. He was driving it around in the daytime and wanted brake lights on it. He never hooked up any turn signals. Never had anything else hooked up. The only wiring on the car when I bought it was the tail lights, or not tail lights even, just brake lights. Brake lights only, and then it had the alternator, the coil, and the fuel pump. That was it for wiring. Okay, I think that's about it for what Brian did. There might be other stuff I don't know about. So I guess let's talk about what I've done. I drove the car home from his place. I put the new tires on in his driveway, and I drove the car home. Biggest thing that was scaring me was the windshield was just about ready to fall out of the car. And if you want to go back and look at the very first video where Eliza comes home, we get a look at this up here. This was all rusted and gone. This whole piece up here on top of the windshield was. I welded that in all new and came down with a lip so I could weld it to the outer lip and put my gasket and everything back on. And the glass was all broken, coming apart, and the gasket was rotten. So I think if a guy would have driven the car just a few more miles, the windshield would have fell out. So that was the very first thing I started on when I started working on the car. I fixed this area above the windshield. And then we moved on to we put all new floor pans in back to about right here. From here on back they were pretty good. Then I rebuilt these A-pillars. They were all broke loose on the bottom. All of this is new from the hinge down, and then it's been all repaired up through here. And then we put on 2 new rocker panels. Repaired the B-pillars a little bit. They weren't too bad, but they just needed a little attention on where the foot bolts to the frame. We painted the dash, modified this for these new gauges, and then painted the dash pearl white and the door jambs. The steering wheel got completely redone. It was cracked all to hell. That's all pearl white. Been working on the seats, trying to get them recovered. I'm not very good at it. I'm gonna keep working on them, try to get them, but boy, I wish I could just pay somebody to do that. I do not like running that sewing machine. We got POR 15 painted on the roof. I got a little more to do back in there. The floors have all been painted with that. Made a new transmission tunnel. Got a new wiring harness in here. Got most everything working. We don't quite yet have the right temperature sending unit for the temperature gauge. However, it is working. And then we've got a speedometer issue. Come to find out, that's a 2-to-1 ratio on that speedometer. I'm gonna have to get it some kind of adapter to make that work right, unless I just change the speedometer. The fuel gauge is working properly, the amp gauge is working properly, and I haven't hooked up the oil pressure gauge yet. I've repaired above this window. I built a new structure up here where it was rusted out, and then I just fiberglassed it on the outside. I put a new lip down here to fiberglass too, and that's all pretty solid. Made a door panel there. I got to get it stretched a little tighter, but that's basically how that's going to look. We still got to get, I want to finish the interior this summer, so we got to get these seats done, the door panels done, headliner in it. That headliner takes up a lot of real estate in this car. A guy gets a headliner in, it'll really start looking better in there. And guess that's about where we're at with it. The exhaust ends right, it's got new exhaust on it. Brian had new exhaust put on it. I don't know if I mentioned that, but the mufflers end right in front of the back wheels. I want to get tailpipes on it. That's going to happen soon too. So probably from here on out, we're just going to be working on the interior, trying to get it buttoned up, and we're going to try to probably get tailpipes on it. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at with it. And yeah, we might take her for a drive here after a while. I put the sound deadening down, but just driving the car across the town over here from the other garage to home, it's really noisy still. It's not going to get much better until I block off this trunk area and get the glass in and the window and door seals and stuff, but hey, it's a start, right guys? But anyway, I'm going to leave that here for now, and maybe come out here after a bit, maybe wait for the wife to get home, or maybe go now, I don't know, but here in a bit we'll go for a little drive. See you in a bit, guys. Eliza started out, she seems to be running pretty good. First run in a while. See what happens. Hey guys, we just made it back. We made it 35 miles. Everything seemed fine. Car run good, drove good, didn't overheat. Went down the highway 60 mile an hour. I think we're pretty good to go. There's some things I want to work out. I'd like to get some tailpipes on it. It gets kind of fumey in there, especially with the trunk floor being bad. Just little things like that. But all in all, I think mechanically we're in pretty good shape. So anyway, guys, thanks for following along. Please like, subscribe, share, all them things. We'll catch you on the next one. Later, Jeremy.